Discover the heartwarming moment: 10 ignored souls transformed after a single dad's incredible diner rescue. In the heart of Maplewood, a small Midwestern town, Jake's Diner wasn't just a spot for breakfast. It was a haven. With its red checkered tablecloths and the rich aroma of brewed coffee wafting through the air, it was a place where shared laughter mixed with the sizzling of bacon. But as clouds of economic uncertainty loomed, the once vibrant diner began to see its booths empty. Families who once filled the stools were now grappling with their own hardships. Yet Jake, a determined single father in his late 30s, couldn't sit back and watch his community suffer. He had 2 kids relying on him and the diner his dream for their future. With a heavy heart but unwavering resolve, Jake decided to offer free meals to anyone in need. Patrons who felt invisible started trickling in. There was Toby, a weathered veteran in his tattered jacket, holding back tears as he savored the home-cooked meal and felt a sense of belonging. Sheila, a single mother, juggled a plate of hash browns while soothing her crying baby, finding smiles in the chaos as the soft sound of laughter filled the diner. Even Charlie, the young artist unable to chase his dreams due to his relentless bills, found a quiet corner to sketch while relishing a free slice of cherry pie. As Jake served each meal, he took a moment to chat, offering them not just food, but a sense of hope. Over pancakes, stories flowed: regrets, dreams, and unspoken fears. Jake's Diner morphed into a sanctuary of resilience. But when the local factory announced layoffs, the fabric of their little community began to fray. Fear gripped many, and shadows crept back into lives once lit by Jake's warmth. One fateful evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, news of mounting debts threatened to close the diner for good. Anxiety wound tightly within the hearts of the townsfolk. "What will happen to us?" they whispered, glancing toward the diner's glowing sign, a beacon in the darkening world. Would Jake be able to keep the doors open and continue supporting those in need? Jake stood at the center of this storm, a beacon of strength. With a lump in his throat, he called for a community meeting. "We are more than just neighbors, we are family," he urged. "This diner isn't just about meals, it's about connection, about reclaiming our dignity." The weight of his words hung in the air, igniting hope in those who thought they were beyond saving. Suddenly, ideas flowed like the coffee that once filled the diner's cups. Fundraising events began to take shape: bake sales, car washes, and open mic nights. Yet, underlying tensions erupted, revealing the cracks in their facade. Old prejudices surfaced, exposing divisions that threatened to unravel the unity they were desperately trying to forge. Just when hope seemed tangible, a shocking revelation brought with it an unsettling darkness. One of the diners had a secret that could change everything. Would the townsfolk rally together, or let their differences split them apart? Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With the diner's fate hanging in the balance, Jake knew he had to act quickly. Would the community come together to support not just the diner but each other? As plans took shape for the fundraising event, uncertainty loomed larger than ever, and the once solid ties of community were now being tested. In Jake's Diner, amid simmering anxieties, the possibility of transformation waited silently, ready to bloom. What would the next chapter hold for these 10 souls, intertwined in their struggle? The future was as unpredictable as the weather outside, and the heart of Maplewood beat louder with every passing day. The night of the fundraising event arrived, charged with a mix of excitement and anxiety. Lights strung across the diner cast a warm glow, illuminating the faces of neighbors who once felt miles apart. Jake stood behind the counter, trying to reassure himself as the sound of chatter filled the air. People were laughing, but he could still sense the underlying tension. A makeshift stage had been set up in the corner, decorated simply with a few colorful streamers. Tonight as open mic night would rekindle hope, giving voice to the silent struggles they all faced. Charlie, nervously clutching his sketchbook, glanced up at the small crowd. He had decided to read some of his poems aloud. "This will be good for me," he told himself, trying to suppress the flutter of uncertainty in his stomach. Sheila, still juggling motherhood and dreams that seemed just out of reach, took a deep breath and joined the stage. With her baby tucked safely in a sling, she shared her story about the challenges of being a single mother, unearthing feelings that resonated deeply with everyone who listened. Her genuine candor sparked a round of applause, igniting a wave of courage among the others. Suddenly, more people began to step forward, each sharing pieces of their lives, revealing struggles and triumphs that seemed universal in their resonance. As the evening continued, more homemade treats appeared on the buffet table, lovingly prepared by the community. Smiles bloomed as they dug into pies, cakes, and casseroles designed to nourish both the body and spirit. The diner, once a simple restaurant, became a canvas reflecting their collective resilience. However, tension simmered beneath the surface. Toby, feeling the weight of his own scars, gripped his coffee cup tight as he listened. Old prejudices threatened to spill over, recalling the days when he felt judged rather than welcomed. He caught sight of a younger patron staring at him with uncertainty, as if trying to make sense of this man's rough exterior. Toby knew he had to confront those unspoken barriers, or risk deepening the divide. "Hey, everyone," he finally said, raising his voice above the chatter. "I've carried a lot of pain, but I realize we're all in this together. Let us not forget that." Silence fell momentarily, then the crowd erupted in applause. A mutual understanding sparked. They were not just faces in a diner. They were intertwined, battling their struggles with shared strength. Just as the night seemed to be rounding a corner, a figure stepped through the front door. Sarah, a widow in her 50s, who had often sat alone in the back booth. Her eyes looked troubled as she slowly made her way to the center of the diner. Everyone turned to her, and the warmth fading in the crowd was palpable. They were now on the edge of an uncomfortable revelation. Jake felt a knot in his stomach as he stepped forward to greet her. "Sarah, what is on your mind?" With a shaky breath, she hesitated, then said, "There is something I need to tell you all. Something I've been holding on to for a long time." The room fell quiet, breaths held in anticipation. What secret weighed on Sarah's heart, and would it threaten to tear apart the fragile connection they had only just begun to build? The sense of community that filled the room hung in the balance, and as everyone waited, the unspoken tension was almost suffocating. What would her truth reveal? Sarah's voice trembled as she took a step closer to the microphone, the soft rustle of her dress cutting through the silence. Jake could see her fingers turning white as they gripped the stand, as if she were trying to ground herself against the storm of emotions swirling inside her. "I've lived here for years," she began, her eyes scanning the crowd, pausing on familiar faces that had quietly shared meals and conversations over time. "But I've always kept to myself. I thought that meant I was being strong. I thought I could handle everything alone." A gentle murmur ran through the crowd. They were engaged now, listening intently, leaning toward her. "I lost my husband 2 years ago," Sarah continued, her voice dropping like a pebble into still water. "He was my best friend. I was lost without him. Everyone told me I needed to move on, but grief doesn't have a timeline." Tears shimmered in her eyes as she faced the audience, revealing a vulnerability that wrapped around the room like a warm blanket. "In my pain, I shut everyone out, even my own family. I thought it was easier to be invisible." Jake's heart ached for her. He could feel the shared burden of loss in the room, the kind that seemed to bind them all together in that moment. "But tonight," she said, her breath steadying, "I see so many faces I recognize, faces that carry their own burdens. I realize I've been wrong to hide. You all have stories too. We all face shadows." The silence that followed was thick with understanding, a collective heartbeat echoing her confession. She paused as she collected her thoughts. "I'm here to learn that it's okay to reach out, to lean on each other. So, I'm asking, can we be there for one another?" A ripple of responses washed over the crowd, muffled affirmations that carried the weight of newfound connection. Toby wiped a tear from his eye, while Sheila nodded, holding her baby a little tighter. Jake felt a wave of courage swell within himself. "You're not alone, Sarah. We're all part of this together. This is what the community means," he said, his voice filled with warmth. "Let us support each other." Sarah smiled softly, the tension in her face easing as laughter returned, punctuating the air. The thread of unity had been woven deeper, binding them all together in a fragile yet powerful embrace. Charlie, emboldened by Sarah's words, stepped forward with his sketchbook in hand. "I've been afraid to share. But if you can share your truth, then maybe I can too," he said, his voice a little stronger. The bravery flowed, igniting a cascade of stories. People felt encouraged to share their truths. In that small diner, they had created a tapestry of lives intertwined by challenges and moments of light. The open mic night had turned into a powerful exchange, an act of collective healing. As the night progressed, laughter mingled with tears, stories threading into an unbreakable fabric. Sarah glanced at Jake, gratitude reflected in her eyes, as if thanking him for his silent support. But just as the spirit of the evening surged, the door swung open again, slamming against the wall with a harshness that caught everyone off guard. A figure stood there, silhouetted against the streetlights, breathing heavily, eyes wild with urgency. Jake's heart sank. Who could it be now? What message did this newcomer bring? The laughter faded, replaced by a curious unease, and a renewed tension settled over the diner like a heavy fog. "What is it?" Jake asked, stepping toward the figure, his voice ready to face whatever chaos lay ahead. "What has happened?" The answer hung just out of reach, and Jake could feel the weight of uncertainty bearing down on them all once again. The newcomer took a shaky breath, eyes darting around the room, absorbing the warmth that had just filled it. I'm sorry," he stammered, stepping inside and letting the door swing shut behind him. "I didn't mean to barge in on such a moment. It's just, I have news, and it can't wait." Jake instinctively felt the energy in the room shift. Whispers traded hints of worry. Sarah's smile faded slightly, the weight of dread drawn closer. "What is wrong?" she asked, her voice steady despite the tremor underneath. The man, perhaps in his late 30s, wiped a bead of sweat from his brow. "My name is Mark. I'm new in town. I've only been here a few days, but there's been a terrible accident. The bridge just outside of town, it collapsed. A couple of cars went over." A collective gasp echoed through the diner. The reality of the news blanketed the room. Jake's stomach churned. He thought of the bridge he crossed daily, images of the cars tumbling through the air flooding his mind. Are there casualties?" Charlie's voice broke through the silence, his sketchbook slipping from his lap onto the floor. Mark nodded solemnly, a faraway look in his eyes. "Emergency services are already there, but they need help. They're calling for volunteers to assist with the rescue efforts. Some people might still be trapped." Every heart in the diner seemed to skip a beat, a shared pulse of urgency filling the air. In an instant, the laughter and shared stories evaporated, replaced by a shared sense of purpose gripping the room tightly. Jake stepped forward. "We can't just sit here. If they need help, we should go. It's what Sarah was talking about, coming together." Sarah nodded, her previous fears flickering, replaced by a glow of determination. We can't leave anyone behind. We have to do this. As people began to gather their things, conversations bubbled up about who could drive, who might have equipment that could help. The sense of distress ignited a fire in their spirits, turning them from a group of individuals into a focused team. Jake noticed Toby, his eyes wide. My mom always said we're stronger together. I can help, but I don't know how to lift heavy stuff. A smile crept onto Mark's face through the gloom. That's okay. They need people to direct traffic, comfort the families at the scene. You don't have to be a hero. Just being there helps. The urgency swept through the group, each person feeling the weight of something greater than themselves thrumming through their veins. In that moment, Jake felt something shift inside him. They were ready to face the unknown, ready to rally for those caught in crisis. The diner now felt more than just a place to share grief. It became a launchpad for hope and action. As they filed out of the diner, Jake caught Sarah's eye. The gratitude was now a spark of newfound resolve. They were bound together, not just in sorrow, but in a shared mission. But just as they reached the parking lot, another figure emerged from the shadows. A woman, frantic, weaving between their group, her cries slicing through the weight of the night. She clutched her phone, eyes wide with a frantic desperation that sent a chill through the air. Please! They can't find my husband. Jake's heart tightened. Would they be able to help her? The weight of the moment sank in, the unknown stretching ahead of them, pulling them forward. What if they weren't strong enough to face this? The truth loomed like the darkness around them, and Jake felt the urgency swell again, pushing them into action. What do we do? He asked, voice thick with working hard to remain grounded amidst the chaos. And then, there was a flicker of hope in the woman's eyes as she spoke again. You have to look for him. Jake took a breath. There was no turning back now. Jake turned to the woman, her distress radiating from her like heat off a fire. What's his name? He asked, his voice steadying. Peter, she cried, clenching her fists. Peter Thompson. He was driving home from work when the bridge collapsed. Instantly, Jake felt the weight of responsibility. It felt colossal, more than he had ever imagined bearing. The group huddled closer, urgency knotting the air around them. Charlie scrambled to find a pen and paper from his backpack, hastily jotting down details. What does he look like? Sarah asked, her voice soft yet firm. He is tall, with dark hair, kind of scruffy. He was wearing a blue jacket. Oh God, please. You have to find him. The woman's tears flowed freely now, glistening in the light, each drop a plea woven with hope and fear. We will find him, Jake assured her, feeling the weight of his promise like a boulder in his gut. Mark stepped forward, rallying the group into action. Okay, listen up. There's no time to waste. If we spread out, we can cover more ground. Jake, you take Sarah and Charlie. I'll go with Toby and a few others to the bridge. We'll meet back here in an hour. Let us go! Without another moment of hesitation, they moved. Jake grabbed Sarah's hand, squeezing it tightly. We can do this. We have to believe we can. As they sprinted down the street, adrenaline surged through Jake. He felt alive, driven by the need to help. They turned corners, diving into alleyways and side streets that snaked toward the bridge. The night air was thick with uncertainty, but laced with purpose. Charlie, heart pounding, remained close beside them. What do we do when we get there? He asked, breathless. We look for signs. We call out his name, Jake replied, recalling the countless times he had seen rescue teams on television, how they always shouted for lost loved ones. Arriving at the bridge's ruins, they halted, taking in the terrible sight before them. Shattered concrete and twisted metal jutted out like the jagged bones of some enormous beast. Panic fluttered in Jake's chest as he gazed upon the chaos. Sarah turned to Charlie. You stay here and keep an eye on the ground. Look for anything that seems out of place, or for people who might need help. Charlie nodded, determination setting in his features. I can do that. Jake pulled Sarah closer as they began calling out. Peter? Peter Thompson. Their voices echoed, bouncing off the wreckage and melting into the night sky. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. Each responseless shout weighed heavier than the last. Suddenly, a shout broke through. Over here! It was Mark, waving his arms, his figure framed against the light of the emergency vehicles that had gathered. He pointed toward a cluster of rescuers. Jake's heart raced. Is that him? Not yet. But we think there's someone trapped over here. Mark shouted, urging them to follow. They darted toward him, hearts pounding with both fear and hope. As they rushed closer, a flicker caught Jake's eye. There was a pocket of movement below a heap of debris, a figure. Breath caught in his throat as he realized this could be Peter. Hold on! Jake shouted, adrenaline coursing through him. But before he could move, a sudden noise rang through the chaos, a sharp crack of shifting metal above them. Everyone back! Mark yelled, pulling them away just in time as debris fell, crashing onto the ground where they had just stood. Now the stakes had shifted, the shadows of danger looming closer, and that flicker of hope began to dim. Come on! Jake urged everyone, his heart pounding fiercely at the thought of losing Peter, of losing this chance. As they regrouped, he felt the weight of the night pressing down on them. We need a way to stabilize this, Jake said, quickening his mind. Otherwise, we could lose him. But then Mark turned to him, eyes wide, a revelation hitting him hard. What if we ask for more people? The diner, they're waiting to help. Jake's heart surged again, but time was running thin. Could they rally everyone back? Would they help again? Let us go, Jake said, determination igniting within him. As they sprinted back toward the diner, they could still save Peter, but with every step, the darkness of the night seemed to press harder, and time was not on their side. Could their collective strength be enough to change the fate of one more soul? The diner glowed in the distance, a beacon of hope surrounded by the night's looming shadows. Jake ran ahead, the sound of his steady heartbeat drowning out everything else. He could barely stand the thought of what could happen if they didn't get back in time. Could they really save Peter? As they burst through the diner doors, the warm light welcomed them, contrasting sharply with the cold reality outside. Tables were still filled with patrons, their chatter a distant hum against the urgency that hung in the air. Listen up, Jake called, trying to penetrate the clamor. We need your help. There is someone trapped under the bridge debris. His name is Peter Thompson. The conversation around the diner dropped as anxious faces turned toward him. Several people leaned in, concern etched on their brows. What can we do? An older woman asked, her voice trembling slightly. More hands, more eyes. Mark chimed in, quick to rally the crowd. If we could all head to the bridge, we can help stabilize the wreckage and get him out. A young man with a baseball cap nodded. I can drive a couple of people there. I have a truck outside. Count me in, another voice came from the back, and within moments the diner erupted into action. Jake's heart swelled with gratitude and hope as he watched people rise from their tables, urgency becoming contagious. They were ready to fight for a stranger, a testament to the power of community. They piled into the truck, excitement and fear blending into a heady mix. The engine roared to life, echoing through the night as Jake clung to the side, while Sarah held onto the back railing. The trees blurred into streaks of shadow as they sped towards the bridge. When they arrived, a flurry of activity replaced the ghostly silence that had enveloped the ruins before. Rescue teams were on the scene, flashlights cutting through the darkness like sieves, and the sound of metal scraping against metal filled the air. Jake jumped down from the truck, urgency pulling him toward the crowd gathering around the fallen debris. "Where's Peter?" he called to a firefighter nearby. The man, dust-covered and weary, shook his head. "Still trapped. We're trying to stabilize this mess before we can go in. Let us help," Jake insisted, the pleading in his voice rising above the chaos around him. "Okay, but it's risky," the firefighter warned. "We need to move carefully. You don't want to make it worse." They nodded, ready to do whatever it took. Mark, Sarah, and the others joined the efforts, working alongside the professionals. Jake felt adrenaline wash over him as hope surged through the group. Each piece of debris they adjusted seemed like a small victory, each moment spent inching closer to saving Peter. And then, amidst the clamor, the earth beneath them rumbled ominously. Jake's stomach dropped, as if gravity itself had decided to pull him into the ground. "Back! Everyone back!" he shouted, leaping away just as the ground gave a little, a warning of what was to come. "What was that?" Charlie cried, his voice shaky, as he stumbled to regain his footing. "More support is needed. Hold steady," the firefighter directed, but Jake could feel the weight of panic creeping back in, bearing down on everyone's shoulders. As they began securing the rescuer lines, Jake caught sight of Sarah's determined expression. She was all in, pulling on her gloves, ready for action. It reminded him they weren't just strangers in this fight. They were a community, banded together by a thread of hope that refused to break. But as they reached a critical point in the operation, a chilling noise echoed overhead. "Watch out!" Mark yelled, just as another tremor shook the ground. The small hope they had built seemed to hang precariously in the air. Could they weather this storm, or would it all come crashing down? The moment of truth was drawing closer, and Jake had to ask the question that loomed over them all. Would their efforts be enough to bring Peter back home? The ground rumbled again, more violently this time, as if mocking their efforts. Jake's heart raced. He felt the fear in every shared glance. The firefighters were already shouting commands to keep everyone steady, yet chaos threatened to unravel what little order they had. "Stay calm! We can do this!" Mark shouted, straining to keep the nervous volunteers focused. Jake stepped closer to the debris, his hands trembling slightly as he supported a piece of dislodged metal. He couldn't help but catch glimpses of the other rescuers. They were huddled together, exchanging nervous whispers. Each heart in that crowd beat for Peter, his life intertwined with theirs, even if they had never met him until now. "Jake," Sarah's voice cut through the tension. "If we don't get that beam off Peter, it could crush him when the next tremor hits." He looked through the crevice. The darkness seemed impossibly thick, and every moment felt like an eternity. "Can you hear us, Peter?" he called into the void, his voice trembling. "We're coming for you, hold on." In that instant, he noticed a flicker of light. A dim flashlight beam dangerously blinked inside the rubble. It was fleeting, but made his heart surge. "Peter!" he shouted again, desperation creeping in. "Are you there?" The response came in the form of a faint cough. Relief washed over the group, igniting a spark of determination in their hearts. "We've got him," Jake exclaimed. "We know you're there, Peter. Hold tight, we're going to get you out." At that moment, the noise overhead grew dangerously loud. A cacophony of creaking metal and snapping wood surrounded them. The crowd gasped collectively, eyes wide, as pieces of the shackled structure threatened to fall. "Get back, everyone!" the firefighter yelled, panic in his voice. "We can't let this collapse." Jake's instincts told him to run. But something deeper held him there. An ache to save not just a life, but to fight for the belief they all shared, the hope that a community could rise up even in the darkest of moments. Louise, the woman who had first asked how she could help, came beside him, her hand shaking. "How can we stabilize that beam?" "By supporting it just before it collapses." he shouted over the noise. "We can use those 2x4s. He pointed to a pile of lumber nearby. Sarah nodded intently. "I'll get them. Anyone else?" Almost instinctively, others scrambled forward, and soon they were dragging the supports into position. Heart pounding, Jake worked alongside them, fixing beams where they would matter most, trusting to hold steady while Peter fought against the odds below. "Now on 3. The firefighter ordered. 1, 2, 3. With a heave, they steadied the beam, straining as adrenaline coursed through them. It held, but just barely. A collective sigh of relief rushed past their lips, fueling their resolve. Then, suddenly, above them, the structure creaked ominously again. "Just a little more," Jake urged, but doubt began to linger. Was this truly enough? As the dust settled slightly, that flickering light flickered again, a soft, reassuring pulse. Was Peter still alive? Was there enough time? "Come on, Peter!" Mark shouted, grit in his voice. "You gotta hold on." But in the heart of the chaos, the next tremor hit with devastating force, shaking their resolve to the core. Jake squeezed his eyes shut, ready for the worst, when the earth seemed to settle as quickly as it had shook, and harsh silence fell. Jake opened his eyes just in time to see a shadow move from below the rubble a hand. "Peter!" he cried, hope electrifying every fiber of his being. Would they finally reach him before it was too late? The dark suspense gripped the air, dreading what would come next. What if their combined strength wasn't enough? What were they willing to risk to save one life? Jake's heart raced as he saw the hand. Instinct kicked in. His body surged forward. "Hold on, Peter! We're here!" he shouted, urgency pressing on him like the weight of the world. Louise shifted beside him, her eyes filled with determination. "We have to keep holding this beam. We can't let it drop." Her voice trembled but stayed steady, a lifeline in the chaos. The tremors had left their marks on the crowd, fear etched deep on every face. Jake could see it even in Mark's clenched jaw and Sarah's frantic movements. Together, they prepared to pull back that which held Peter tight, but could they do it fast enough? "Let us get him out," Mark shouted, as more volunteers joined the effort to push against the beam, hands gripping the lumber firmly. Sarah was already beside Jake, glancing back and forth from the pile to the crew. "We need to be ready. As soon as he is clear, we must pull him out quickly, before anything else happens." Jake nodded, his determination carving through the uncertainty. He peeked through the jagged opening. "Peter, just breathe. We're almost there." Another tremor rippled through the ground, sharper this time. Noise erupted above them. The beam groaned, straining against their efforts. "Let us go!" Jake yelled, the fire in his belly fueling his voice. He pushed harder, willing his body to follow suit. The earth beneath his feet felt alive, angry, as though it resented the fight for life unfolding above. With every pulse of their joined hearts, Jake felt the breath of hope more than he had ever known before. The crowd began chanting Peter. "Peter!" as if their voices might carry him back from the brink. Jake caught another glimpse of that flickering flashlight, its light cutting through the dark, fragile and brave. "Peter, keep shining that light." He couldn't shake the feeling that they were, in some way, tethered. Each flicker calling them forth, sharing in the fight together. Then came a gasp, cutting through the chant. "There's blood!" someone cried. Panic rippled through the crowd. Jake met Sarah's gaze. Both felt the same fear wrap around their chests. "Hold steady," Mark warned. "We can't let fear take over. Get a first aid kit," a voice shouted in the distance. "I'll get it," someone said, darting away. Yet Jill, another volunteer who had remained too quiet thus far, stood up, her voice firm. "We need to focus. This is about Peter, not our fears." Inspired, Jake struck again, yelling, "We can do this. 1, 2, 3. Together, they heaved the support away with a synchrony only desperation could forge. Time slowed, like a still moment before a storm broke. "Peter!" they all shouted, voices lifting. The beam slid free. A howl of relief surged through the crowd, echoing the intensity of their feelings. A shadow escaped into the crack of light. "Help!" he croaked, barely audible, but enough to ignite a fire in their hearts. Someone rushed forward, arms grasping for him as they pulled at the darkness that still held Peter captive. Hands reached blindly, finding flesh and bone. Someone cried out, "I've got him!" But just then, a loud crash thundered above them. The building trembled as dust rained down. For a heartbeat, everything seemed to hold its breath. "No!" Jake's voice boomed, clutching the beam as it threatened to fall again. His mind screamed against the reality. Would it crush them all before they could save one life? Would they lose everything, just when hope stood so close? With Peter dizzy and grasping at the light, would they be able to pull him to safety, or would they helplessly watch everything collapse around them? "Hold on!" Jake shouted, his adrenaline surging like a current through every fiber of his being. The dust settled in the air around them, a heavy reminder of the danger that surrounded them. Peter's weak voice broke through the fog of panic. "I'm here! Just pull me out!" Those words ignited a spark of determination in Jake. He could feel the crowd's energy shifting, their collective heartbeats thrumming in unison with his own. "Let us go!" Mark yelled again, urgency creeping into his voice. The beam shifted, but they were ready. They just needed to summon one last reserve of strength. Jake looked to Sarah, her face set in fierce concentration. "We can't stop now!" Jake shouted, pumping his fist into the air before grasping the beam with both hands. The tremors rattled his bones, but he held on, refusing to let fear dictate their fate. Behind him, Jill's voice cut through the chaos once more. "Focus, everyone! We're almost there. Just think of Peter." She had a way of bringing clarity amidst the storm, and her words galvanized the group further. "On 3, Jake called, rallying them yet again. 1, 2, 3. With a mighty heave, they pulled the beam apart, the weight of their combined souls surging as one. The beam finally shifted, scraping against the debris that surrounded Peter. For an excruciating moment, it felt like time suspended. Dust swirled, and every breath came hard, tension electrifying the air. Then, they saw the outline of Peter emerging into the light, his face pale but determined. "I can see you," he managed, voice thick with effort. "Just a little more," Louise exclaimed as she took a few steps forward, hands reaching into the well of darkness, grasping for Peter's outstretched hand. Their fingers met barely like lifelines against the uncertainty. "Hold on tight," Sarah encouraged. Even as Jake wrestled with the beam, the sudden weight changed, threatening to collapse everything once more. With renewed vigor, they pulled every ounce of muscle and hope into freeing him. The crowd cheered, voices intertwining in a chorus of support. "Peter! Peter!" rippling through the air, each shout a thread weaving them closer. As Peter's body came nearer, so did the peril. The building creaked ominously, like it was protesting against their desperate rescue. "Jake! It's shifting," Mark warned, eyes wide with alarm. "No!" Jake gritted his teeth, unwilling to let any moment falter. "We can do this." With one last thrust, the support beam shifted just enough, allowing Peter to slip past the jagged edges that encircled him. Finally, with one swift action, Peter was pulled free, collapsing into the arms of those who had fought to save him. A mix of tears and laughter erupted from the crowd. Relief washed over Jake's body as he fell to his knees beside Peter. "How are you feeling, buddy?" Jake asked, brushing the dust off his friend while checking for injuries. "Like I just survived a monster," Peter replied, a weary smile breaking through his pain. But then a loud crack shattered the moment, drawing everyone's attention back to the unstable structure. The tremors grew, signaling the possibility of a larger collapse looming over them. "Get back!" yelled Mark, instinctively pushing Louise away from the building. Panic surged once more through the crowd, the air thick with tension as fear crept in again. "Everyone stay calm!" Jake shouted, but uncertainty danced in his own heart. Was this truly over? What would happen next? With every second counting down, would they be able to escape the looming disaster, or was it already too late for the fragile peace they had just fought to achieve? As the dust began to settle around them, Jake looked around at the faces of the people who had come together, united in an extraordinary act of courage and heart. The weight of disbelief and horror began to lift, replaced by something stronger, the sheer power of community and hope. Just moments ago, the thought of losing not only Peter, but themselves felt insurmountable. Yet now, they had done the impossible. They had pulled together in the face of crisis, and together they had emerged stronger than before. "Peter, can you sit up?" Jake asked, heart racing, as he lowered himself to assist him. Slowly, Peter nodded, taking a deep breath and using whatever strength he had left to push himself up. As he looked around, relief poured into the space. A smile struggled and finally broke onto his face. "You guys saved me." The crowd erupted into cheers, a symphony of joy that weaved through the crisp night air. Laughter mingled with tears. The fear that had clouded their hearts melted away into shared gratitude. They were aching and raw, but they were also free. Jake felt the warmth of a familiar hand on his shoulder. It was Sarah. She squeezed gently and said softly, "You did it, Jake. We all did it." He could see the same realization dawning on everyone around them. They were no longer a collection of strangers or struggling souls. They were family, forever tied together by the threads of love and sacrifice they had spun the night. Charlie stepped up too, his voice a little shaky but full of conviction. "I think this is the start of something new for all of us." The words resonated deeply. Yes, they had united in a moment of tragedy, but tonight had shown them they could continue weaving this bond beyond the din of the diner or the bridge's ruins. Old prejudices, once buzzed around the sidelines, felt too fragile to withstand this newfound kinship. Toby took a deep breath, his voice steady. "I thought I was strong on my own, but I see now strength comes from standing together." The people around him nodded in agreement, their heads bobbing up and down like synchronized scaffolding. They turned toward Jake, awaiting his thoughts. What could he say? The fear of watching his dreams crumble felt laughable now compared to saving a life. He faced them all, a gentle smile spreading across his face. "From now on, let us not just be neighbors who share meals," he began, his voice firm yet tender. "Let us be family. We've already shown what we can do when we believe in each other. We should hold events, create more spaces for sharing stories and laughter. This diner will be our haven again, filled with warmth, hope, and connection." Applause broke out again, a clapping wave of resolution that surged, touching everyone's heart. Jake looked at Sarah, who was already nodding enthusiastically. "I want to help organize a monthly open mic night right here. A night for stories, art, and memories where we can all share who we are." Encouraged, more faces lit up. Sheila raised her hand. "And let us have cooking classes. Teach each other, share recipes. Feeding the body only connects us deeper." The spark of ideas flew like wildfire. It was like a breath of fresh air, inviting each one of them to participate, to become a part of something that transcended just surviving. As the night unfolded, laughter and stories began to merge into a newfound mission, a heartwarming sense that, inexorably, they were on a path toward healing. They weren't merely collecting fragments of lives, but rather building a bridge among one another, much like the one that had just crumbled. Hours later, the diner became a symbol of renewal. With each laugh shared, every hope spoken, They built resilience brick by brick. And when Jake looked around at the faces illuminated by the warm diner lights, it struck him hard they were not fading murmurings, merely surviving in the shadows. They were bright flames, fiercely radiating light, ready to conquer whatever else life may throw their way. In that moment, with Peter recovering confidently to his feet, and the peaceful laughter surrounding them, Jake knew their story was just beginning. This was more than just a diner. It had become a new heartbeat, a tapestry of lives woven together in hope, love, and resilience. Jake took a deep breath, feeling full with gratitude. And remember, this is just the start. We grow stronger together. As they celebrated their accomplishments, the night echoed with joy, reminding them all of the strength found in unity. And as for Maplewood, it would always resonate with the beautiful sounds of laughter and friendship, thriving in the warmth of hope Jake had created for his community. The world would remember the night 10 ignored souls were transformed into a family, a home where everyone mattered. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. This is your moment to show your support. Leave a like now to boost the algorithm. Comment your feelings about this incredible transformation. And don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this inspiring journey. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through their actions.